From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Well, good morning and welcome in. It has been another busy week in Georgia politics. Our conversation with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is only 60 seconds away.
Yeah, but first, Georgia's Democratic Party has a new leader. State Democrats elected their new chair Saturday afternoon. 11 Alive's Angelina Salcido takes us through it.
It resembled a campaign rally. Supporters of Charlie Bailey and Wendy Davis hoping their candidate would be the next chair of the Democratic Party. Bailey and Davis survived a multi-person first round of voting Saturday afternoon in southwest Atlanta. Bailey won the runoff to become the next chair, taking over the job from Congresswoman Nikema Williams as the Democrats recover from a disappointing 2024 election season.
People have full cause to be angry at the Republicans, but we have not been fighting enough. And people aren't just going to know all these things. You know, we got to communicate what our values are, that we fight for working people, the dignity of every person, their ability to get justice, that we believe in that, and we have specific plans to accomplish that.
Bailey had endorsements from Senator Jon Ossoff and Congresswoman Lucy McBath. Bailey is a former Fulton County Assistant District Attorney who is now charged with raising money and winning over disaffected Democrats, independents, and swing voters. For the Georgia Vote, I'm Angelina Salcido.
There may be no Secretary of State in the country more famous than Brad Raffensperger. The national spotlight fell on the Georgia election leader in the days following the 2020 presidential race, while President Donald Trump and others within his party made unproven claims that the election was stolen. Raffensperger, a Republican, defended the state's election system and the integrity of its results. In this week's Sunday Conversation, he reveals he is now contemplating his own political future.
Let's talk about the future here. There is a big election year coming up in 2026. There is a Senate position up for grabs. Senator Jon Ossoff, a Democrat, is going to be up for re-election. And the governor's mansion here in Georgia is open. When you look ahead to those races, what kind of candidate from your party do you hope emerges?
A true conservative.
What does that look like?
I think you're looking at him.
You're running?
Could be. I'm looking at all my options, and we're talking to our team, and so we'll let you know, in a few months.
What will be the deciding factor for you?
I care about America, and I care about Georgia. When we moved here from Virginia back in 1982, I was working for a company, bought a business, it was a daycare center, and then I went out and I started my own construction business. Georgia's been really good to me. And somewhere along the line, I got into public service. And also I realized, just like we're fighting in DC, a lot of things in America weren't working for hardworking Georgians, middle-class folks. And I love delivering service and value for hardworking taxpayers every day. And so that really will be my focus. How can we deliver value for the voters of Georgia? You look at our elections office. North Carolina has 72 people in their office. We have 30. Yet we're ranked number 1. North Carolina isn't. So when you look at this value that we're delivering, that's what I believe government should deliver to hardworking Georgians that are paying taxes every day, every week. And so I believe in public service. I want to show that we can actually provide good service. And so that's what I would be focused on. How do we make things better in Georgia for hardworking folks that want to get ahead?
Do you think you could make it through a Republican primary?
I did in 2022, no runoff, and someone was endorsed by someone else, and they said I didn't have a chance, and I won without a runoff. And then in the fall, I won with the largest winning percentage in the entire state of Georgia. But I noticed that Governor Kemp did a little bit better in some areas, and that keeps me humble, and I just know there's more work to be done. But I had a great message, and I'll continue to do that. I think people are looking for someone that's honest, has integrity, that'll stand in the gap, and make a decision when they have to. They're also looking for someone that's actually done something, accomplished something. They weren't relying on what their family had done, and they haven't been a lifelong bureaucrat. They've actually built a company. They understand how hard it is. They understand how hard it takes to build a team of people. And that's what I've done in the Secretary of State's office. I built a great team. And that's why we're recognized number 1 for election integrity in the entire country.
There has been tension between you and President Donald Trump at times, particularly in the wake of the 2020 presidential election. but you also recently, just last week, praised his handling of the southern border. In 2021, Georgia Republicans censured you. In 2022, you won re-election handily here. Where do you see your role in the modern Republican Party?
I'm a true conservative, and I think that's really where I always will be, because I believe that the border should be secure, and I think all that illegal immigration that Biden allowed that went on, 3.5 million people a year, was ridiculous. We didn't have to change any laws. All you had to do was enforce the laws we had, and we shut it down. And so I give high marks for the president for doing that. And I also believe strongly that only American citizens should be voting in our elections. And Georgia is Real ID compliant. I've done 2 citizenship audits to make sure only American citizens are voting in our elections.
Do you get tired of people within your own party doubting you?
No, because it is what it is. My job is just to go out and be Brad and be the best Brad I can be and do the best job I can to deliver value for the taxpayers of Georgia.
Now, that is just part of our conversation. To see the full interview with the potential 2026 contender, look for it right now at 11 Alive Plus. And this is a good time to bring in some pretty intelligent folks to talk about it.
And we do have a full table this morning. So joining us is Stephen Lawson, a Republican communications strategist who has served as senior communications advisor to House Speaker John Burns. He's also worked for Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones and Congressman Mike Collins. Democratic strategist Fred Hicks, the founder and president of the Hicks Evaluation Group, which has worked with hundreds of political campaigns for nearly 20 years. And Shannon McCaffrey, who leads the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's team that covers the state capitol, a longtime political reporter. Welcome to panel, guys. We just saw a fascinating conversation with Zach and Brad Raffensperger. Zach, you asked him if he's running. He said maybe. Stephen, I want to direct this question to you. If you're Brad Raffensperger, you're putting on the glasses for now. I know he's going to be the one that has to make this decision. But what is your move? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I think he's looking at 2 options. I think he's probably looking at the U.S. Senate race against John Ossoff if Governor Kemp decides to take a pass on that.
Right.
But I also think he's got his eye potentially on the governor's mansion and looking at that Republican primary, which is a little in flux right now. So I think those are the 2 things sort of at the top of his list. And he knows, given his statewide name ID from 2020 and again in 2022, he's got a little bit of time to make that decision.
Yeah.
Now, Shannon, you've been covering Georgia politics for a long time. You saw that exchange. The Secretary of State, he did not officially announce, but did it feel to you like he was walking up to the line there? Do you feel like this is somebody who's going to enter a race?
He certainly sounded like it. He definitely kind of was promoting a message that is probably what he would promote should he decide to run. I think it's interesting, just like Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger has been able to walk a really delicate line between disagreeing with Donald Trump and sometimes being at odds with Donald Trump, but still having a very high approval rating and still being reelected. The 2 of them have really perfected that dance, and it'll be interesting to see if he continues down the road.
Yeah.
And Fred, from a Democrat's perspective, if Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger does jump into one of these races, what's the reaction from Democrats? Is this somebody who y'all want to see get into a race, or is this somebody who you think we don't want to run against him?
Well, I think our position would be the more the merrier, because if you have a contested Republican primary for any of these seats, that means they're spending time, they're spending money, they're spending resources, and they're increasing their record with their rhetoric, the things that we can use in the general election. So we will welcome him into the race, and it'll be interesting to see what other candidates would do and how they would respond to him.
But would you rather see a Raffensperger than a Kemp?
Based on this AJC polling, the one thing I can say is that there's a lot of reasons to celebrate if you're the Ossoff campaign, you're Democrats right now. He is in a dead heat with the most popular elected official in Georgia, someone who vanquished the Trump-endorsed candidate and who vanquished Stacey Abrams, and he is right there neck and neck with Brian Kemp. So this is great. If I'm Senator Ossoff and this is my starting point right now, I'm feeling pretty good about it, regardless of who the Republican opponent is.
Stephen, you have that look like you want to jump in. I want to ask you, Fred is saying, look, it would be great for Democrats if Republicans have a really contested big field in the primary. Is that something Republicans are worried about right now?
Well, first of all, I'll answer that question for Fred. They would much rather face Brad Raffensperger, because if Brian Kemp runs for this seat, Brian Kemp will be the next U.S. Senator from Georgia. But yeah, Fred is absolutely right. I mean, a crowded primary will only help the incumbent, which is John Ossoff. I've been on record saying, I think he will be a formidable candidate. I think the best case scenario for Republicans, if Brian Kemp does not run, is to consolidate the field. And look, that may be a scenario where President Trump and Brian Kemp work together to play kingmaker, potentially, again. But this is all predicated on if Brian Kemp doesn't run.
On that note, guys, we're just going to take a pause. When we come back, we're going to take a look at a couple of the poll numbers from the AJC's new poll. Stay with us. We'll see you back on the other side of the break. Welcome back. The Trump administration continues to praise what it calls major accomplishments in its first 100 days. But the president of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, put out a statement titled 100 Days of Chaos Meets 100 Days of Resistance, where he laid out a plan to fight some of the president's actions. Well, Morial was in Atlanta this week, and I asked him where he sees that chaos.
Number one, you do not make America great when you fire 250,000 hardworking federal employees without a hearing, without any evidence that they have been engaged in any wrongdoing, without any evidence that they are wasteful or fraudulent or abusive. Number two, when you issue executive orders to wipe out equal opportunity, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, you are not making America great for everyone. You're dividing the nation. You're creating chaos and confusion inside of the government.
Is the only way to bring change hinging on the results of 2026?
So first of all, I don't speak for the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or for any political party, but I do speak for civil rights and equal opportunity, and I do believe that people in this moment want their elected officials to be more assertive, more aggressive, more vocal. It's not just about the election in 2026, although that's important. It's about demonstrating that people will use their bully pulpit. They'll use their voice. They'll use their power in Congress, whatever it may be, to push back and to sharpen, if you will, the conversation about why these policies of the first 100 days are damaging and injurious to the future of America, to the state of Georgia. In Georgia, I noticed this morning, some of the publicly available polling shows that the president has lost a considerable amount of support. It's really support for his policies that have eroded. So these officials, these public officials, these elected officials, these politicians have to be more assertive, or the public will send a message to them.
And you can catch our full interview with Mark Morial right now on 11 Live Plus. You can download it to your TV and watch for free.
It is a good time to see what voters are thinking. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution partnered with UGA on a new poll released this week. The poll of 1,000 registered voters was conducted over 10 days in mid-April. One question asked respondents whether they approve of the way that President Donald Trump has handled his second term so far. 55% said they either somewhat or strongly disapprove. 43% either strongly or somewhat approved. And we are back now with the panel. Shannon, you're from the AJC. You're the politics editor. This is your poll. What did those results tell you?
Well, first of all, they do mirror what we've been seeing nationally, right? What we're seeing in Georgia is very reflective of what we've been seeing in national polls as well. One of the most startling numbers to me, and there are a few of them in there, but is that 55% disapprove. That is up 10 percentage points from our last poll, which we conducted just before his inauguration. Granted, he hadn't taken office yet, but that's what he went into office with, a 45% disapproval rating. It's now 55. We asked about what they feel about his issues. I mean, he won the presidency largely on the strength of immigration and the economy. And the majority of Georgians we talked to in that poll do not approve of his handling of either.
Stephen, you're a Republican. Are these numbers worrying?
No, I don't think they're concerning right now. Obviously, polls are a snapshot in time, and I've said this before. I think the president has clearly come in and he's shaken up Washington, D.C. I don't think there's any question about that. He's dove into a number of policies, and really, I think probably ruffled some feathers in Washington, D.C. I think there's two things on the horizon, given the AJC's poll numbers, that the president and his team should be looking for. One, how do we bring these trade deals and tariffs in for a landing? I think that will be a central question to whether or not his poll numbers can improve. And then the second is this big bill that he is discussing on Capitol Hill in terms of tax credits and investments. If he can get both of those things done, I think these poll numbers flip and we go back to where he was getting at. If he's not able to do that heading into the midterm, I think there could be some more uncertainty.
They absolutely should be concerned about these numbers. These are the worst numbers, if we look at it nationally, of any sitting president since 1953, since the advent of polling. And here in Georgia, when you're talking about a person who won the state just a few months ago being at almost 40% now, that's extremely problematic, and it's problematic for Republican candidates. And that's not me saying that as a Democrat, because Stephen, you know this, and I think everyone knows this. Once voters start to sour on you, they don't really ever get a favorable taste in their mouth again for you.
We do want to move on to some more data, though, because this poll is big and there's a lot in it. So here we go. If the election was held today, who would you vote for in a potential U.S. Senate matchup? That was the question. 46% said Jon Ossoff. 49% said Brian Kemp in that potential matchup. Meanwhile, 48% said they'd pick Jon Ossoff, and 39% said they would pick Brad Raffensperger if that was the matchup. Two other matchups, potential matchups that were polled. One was Senator Jon Ossoff versus John King, the insurance commissioner there. 51% of people said they'd choose Jon Ossoff. 38% went for John King. And finally, 54% of people said they'd pick Jon Ossoff over a 37% group that said they would support Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Shannon, let's start with you. What do those numbers tell you right now? And can they even say anything? Because some people might be watching and saying, gee, it's so far out in the future. What does this tell us?
Exactly. And I mean, this is a hypothetical matchup, and all of those caveats need to apply here. I think it tells us one thing, that Jon Ossoff would love to run against Marjorie Taylor Greene. He seems to be baiting her on social media and every
Stephen,
opportunity
you're smiling about that, too. You smiled there.
I think he'd love her to get into the race. But it also tells us that Kemp's decision here is going to be absolutely critical. Yeah. And it will change, I think, whether this race, how competitive this race is, right? I mean, whether or not this is going to be viewed as a race that is a national one that everyone's going to be throwing money into, or if folks will kind of, the incumbent is going to win and we'll put our money elsewhere. I just think that Kemp, we can't decide, we can't make any conclusion until Kemp decides what he's going to do.
Shannon, go ahead.
It's something that we've talked about on the panel before, a waiting game for Brian Kemp. Is that what's happening here, Stephen?
Yeah, I think Shannon's absolutely right. We've talked about it. That is the domino effect from the governor's decision is going to be real, and it's going to have a ripple effect up and down the ballot across the state. And I think these poll numbers bear that out, as Shannon said.
Fred, for Democrats, particularly looking at the Senate race, if you're advising Jon Ossoff, what are you telling him? What should the strategy be?
Run against Donald Trump. What these poll numbers show me is that the closer a candidate is associated with Donald Trump, the worse they do with Georgia voters. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was a spokesperson for Donald Trump, has fashioned herself after him, is at 37%. Brian Kemp, who has gained his popularity as being someone who's independent, putting Georgia first, does best against Jon Ossoff. So Donald Trump is an albatross, especially when you're looking at a federal race. So my best advice to him is run against Donald Trump and talk about the impact of Donald Trump on Georgia, irrespective of whoever the Republican is. It doesn't matter.
Did that work for Democrats last go round?
Well, Kamala Harris only lost by 115,000 votes or so. So she did far better than, say, Stacey Abrams in 2022. So once the smoke cleared, it was a very close race in 2024. Much closer than we thought.
That's a lot of votes in Georgia. I'll just add that.
Close percentage. It was about a 2% margin.
About 2%. That's not a lot of votes. 115,000 out of 5 million is not a lot. Especially when
the difference between victory and defeat, though, which I think what Stephen was about to say.
Well, I was going to say, and that's why we just had our party elections, because there was so much dissatisfaction with the way the party apparatus performed, and it was engaged, that people feel like we could have won in 2024 if the Democratic Party had been more active. And that's why Senator Ossoff spoke out against the then chair, and why we have a new chair. And that's why Democrats are holding that chair accountable for a win in 2026.
Always so much to talk about. Always so grateful for your insight, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us, and we will be right back after this. As the 2026 campaign season gears up, we continue to watch to see which new contenders may be planning to enter the race for governor, for Senate, or for other roles in what will be a major election year in Georgia.
That's right. And one name that is always in that conversation is Stacey Abrams. The question right now is, will the Democrat run for governor for a third time? 11 Alive's Aisha Howard asked her yesterday.
Will we see a run for governor from Stacey Abrams again?
Aisha, you are an amazing reporter. And I am so grateful that you have a host of questions to ask, and I think there's another one on your card.
Next, we serve up this week's Voice of the Voter by visiting the owner of a Metro Atlanta brewery, the challenges she faces, and what gives her hope. The decisions politicians make in Washington and in Atlanta, they have big impacts on the lives of millions of everyday Georgians. Making sure their voice is heard is more important than ever. And after all, you can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. In this week's Voice of the Voter, Stacia Familo-Hopek takes us inside the Lost Druid, an Avondale Estates brewery she and her husband opened nearly 6 years ago.
Right now we are in our tap room. We had opened about 8 months before COVID, and we've been hanging in ever since. So I like to say we're still standing.
So it's made back there, poured here, you drink it here.
Enjoy it over there.
Do you have one favorite memory? Is there ever one moment you look back on and you think, man, that was a really good day here?
You know, I think the favorite memories are when you see other people enjoying themselves and when they say, you know, that this is their favorite place to come.
There's so much going on in the world. There's so much going on in our state. When you look at the state of politics, what worries you the most?
I think the divisiveness. I think we're allowing small portions of the population that are on the tail ends to overwhelm the messaging and the rest of us.
If you could talk to your elected officials right now, what are the two issues you'd want them to be paying the most attention to?
For us as a manufacturer, particularly at the state level, I wish they would help us to level the playing field. If somebody comes into my tap room and wants to purchase some cans of beer to go, they're limited to only purchase 1 case of beer a day. If I was distributing those cans of beer to a grocery store or a package store, they could go in there and buy as much as they want.
Under current Georgia law?
Under current Georgia law.
So recalibrating state alcohol sales laws, that's priority number 1 for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your other top priority?
I think trying to find ways to make our governments more efficient. You know, we deal with our county government for property tax assessments, for our wastewater management issues, and it's very difficult to work with those entities.
You've told us about your big worries, you've told us about your big issues. We always end with this. What are you most optimistic about?
I think it's, you know, the development that's happening within Avondale Estates itself, whether it's apartments or new housing or new businesses that are coming into the downtown area. All of that serves to just bring more people into the area that gives us all exposure.
And the Lost Druid is coming up on their 6-year anniversary next month, so a happy early anniversary to them.
That is awesome. Great job, Zach. We're going to have to go out there for a beer. Okay. Thanks so much for watching us today. We hope to see you back here next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.